Hi, I'm Gail.
And hi, I'm Catherine. And today we are so delighted and honored to be talking with Karen Grassle, age 79. She's best known for playing one of television's most beloved mothers, the character of Ma on Little House on the Prairie. This was a hit TV series that ran for 8 seasons between 1973 and 1984. So this prairie woman was calm, kind-spoken, and steady. But Karen's personal life was a bit different, as we learn from her raw and authentic memoir, Bright Lights, Prairie Dust, Reflections on Life, Loss, and Love from Little House's Ma, which will be released on November 16th, 2021. So Karen invites us into many rooms of her life, the theater, from California to New York, from stage to television. Another room is her experiences with the sexual revolution and the women's rights movement. And then a deeply interior room, she writes about her bouts with alcoholism, anxiety, depression over the decades, and some failed relationships with men. But Karen is a longtime advocate of equality for women. We'll hear more about that. And she resides now in the San Francisco Bay Area near her son. So Karen, welcome to Women Over 70.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
It's delightful. Well, let's start with the here and now and just give us a really brief glimpse into your present day life now.
Well, this picture that you see behind me is my garden in March. And I've been using this since the pandemic to make it so I don't have to clean my office every time that I go on Zoom. And I go on Zoom a lot. I meet with friends, I meet with support groups and my writing group, a short story group. We've managed to keep going during this, which has been great. But I couldn't stand it that I had to keep tidying up. So I live in a modest 3-bedroom house in the hills in the East Bay. So I have a glimpse of the bay and the sunset. And when I go for my walks, I can see over to the Golden Gate Bridge, and it's very, very pleasant. I was born about 2 miles from here in Albany, California. So when I went to school in Berkeley, I had the feeling of coming home. And as my life took me all over the country and many places around the world, I always had this yearning to come back to the East Bay. And I finally made it about 15 years ago. So it's been a good move for me.
Excellent. So, Karen, why was it important for you to write a book about your life? Why now?
As I say in the book, memory called and I followed. And that's really what happened was when I moved here, I didn't have very many friends. And I was alone a lot. And I didn't have a direction yet. I didn't know how it was going to work out. And all these memories started to rise up inside me, just like smoke in the air. And I became fascinated by that. So I took a class in memoir and I met a marvelous group of women and we formed our own memoir group and we've been meeting ever since. So this year we will publish a little collection. We do this every year just to force us to finish something. And it will be our 12th. Yeah, I think it's our 11th or 12th collection. So we're rather thrilled with that. And so far, 3 of us have published books. One has published, I think, 3 articles in the Times. And one has won some contests, various online women's writing things, So we're rather happy with our progress. None of us were writers.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So you I mean, I'm sure everyone knows you as the character Ma, but you have been an actor since, well, from a relatively young age. So you really dedicated your life to being an actor. And I'm wondering, what accomplishments are you most proud of?
I would like to say something about what it means to me to be an actor and what I was choosing when I chose to dedicate myself to becoming the best actress I could be. And that was that I looked upon this job, this craft, if you will, this art, as a sacred duty. I saw my roots in Greek tragedy where the actors were treated like priests. And I entered the training for my profession with great seriousness, like an acolyte nun. And as I went along, I learned more about what I needed to do to learn more. And my whole life has been a learning experience, but acting has been the path that took me on my journey of learning and becoming a more conscious human being. That has been my goal.
And you've done stage, live theater, and then sort of obviously television. Is there a particular genre that appeals to you that you are more drawn to than the other?
Well, I fell in love with the theater, and during this pandemic, I have to say, I have really missed the theater. In the theater, we're a communal group. We cannot do it alone, and we hug each other, and we share our most intimate goings on with our lives, and we struggle to get it right, and we do it over and over again, and there's just a bonding that, is very, very special. In working in film, if an actor has a small part with you, let's say, they might come in and do that for one day, and then they're gone.
Sure.
And you meet them for the rehearsal, and that's it. So it's a completely different chemistry.
Yes, thanks. I mentioned to you, Karen, that I was going to read your memoir. I was going to skim through it, and I couldn't skim. I read every single word, and I felt I was just drawn into your life, into your challenges, and you really talk about many awakenings in your memoir. And I'm wondering, could you just highlight some of those for us?
Yes, thank you. The awakening that I needed to be an actress was enormous. I had been hiding this from myself since I was a child. I had always performed. I had always made up plays. I sang at Sunday school. It was very obvious to my dad, who said to me, well, I've been trying to talk you out of this for 10 years. Now I'm through talking. And that woke me up because I didn't know it had been so obvious. So that was one. And that was like a huge pivot because I dropped out of Berkeley. I joined a theater in San Francisco, and the die was set. I did go back to Berkeley later because I realized that I didn't know anything and I had to study. And then, of course, it took me to London. Now, I had these tremendous highs and lows. At one point, I was diagnosed as hypomanic, much later. But I saw those as useful to an actress because I could use those emotions to portray the human condition. But I needed help with it because it was throwing me to the floor, and the depression was very, very burdensome. So I started seeking psychoanalysis and psychotherapy when I was about 22. And it's been a long process. I haven't always been in therapy, but there have been certain times in my life I had to, again, find somebody who could help me go to whatever that next thing was.
You know what's really struck me in your memoir, Karen, is it seemed like you had a day life and a night life. And the day life was you're working as an actor, you're very involved with the other your colleagues, you always show up. You might not feel great, but you always show up. And then night comes and it's a dark time, interior dark time.
That's right, Catherine. I think that was especially true once I was on the series, because for once I had absolutely steady work and I had a place to go and a lot to do constantly. And that gave me a structure I had never had before. And it turned out to be a great blessing, but it was very demanding. And then my solution for relaxing would be to pour that glass of wine, and then more and more and more. And my personality would deteriorate, and I could be extremely hysterical or argumentative. I could insult people out in the world. It was pretty bad.
Mm-hmm.
It seems so counter to you, who you are, and yet this is something that it sounds like you've dealt with your entire life almost.
Yeah, I had this terrific anger, Gail, which I think stemmed largely from coming from an alcoholic home, because the ups and downs of not knowing what reality was going to be from day to day, not knowing whether my dad was going to be my champion or my strongest critic, and my mother, who did not believe in expressing anger. So it all just went in. And then I would have these drunken episodes when it would just explode out of me.
I was also very intrigued by your relationships with men, because I'm thinking, these men are really in love with her, and she has these multiple sides of herself, and many of them stood by you for quite a while. But what have you learned through that whole process of being in a relationship, being married, being divorced?
Well, every relationship taught me different things. And I have to look on these men with whom I had these unsuccessful relationships as my teachers. I would say one thing I learned was I'm not good at marriage. And I've just accepted that. You know, I longed all my whole life to have a partner. I just thought that was cat's meow. But that didn't turn out to be the way my life went. And so I've had to let go of that longing, because if I hung on to it, then I was always in lack, always wishing, always feeling sad, So I had to drop it. And it took a lot of personal work and prayer and meditation to let that go.
It was sort of a loss, right? It's a loss when you come to those terms.
Definitely.
You probably had to grieve it, as with so many of the other areas of your life.
Yeah. I think I was grieving daily before I could let go.
I really want to hear more about your work for equal rights for women. You you co-produced and starred in a film, I think it was in the late 1970s, called Battered. Could you tell us about that?
Yes. My friend Cynthia Lovelace Sears and I were looking for a contemporary issue that we could write a movie of the week about. Because at that time, the networks were all doing these issue-oriented movies, and they would be on every week. There seemed to be a yearning in the country for us to raise up some of these shadowy issues and come to terms with them. And of course, a lot of that had to do with women. So on my tour to promote Little House, I met a wonderful journalist in Fort Worth, Texas, and she had just done all this original research about battered wives. And she started talking to me, and my heart began to pound. I just knew this is what we needed to do. So she sent me her articles, in those days by mail, in paper. And then Cynthia read it, and she agreed. And we started to do our own original research there in the Los Angeles area. At that time, there were only 2 shelters in this entire country for women who were abused. And one of them was within striking distance of where we live. So we contacted them and we interviewed these women who were so generous with their stories. And we got it made. There were a lot of ups and downs in that journey too. At one point, some guys tried to steal it from us. And we had to really go to bat to say, oh no, these women trusted us, and you cannot use their stories in material that is so denigrating.
Was it a documentary, Karen?
No, it was what they called a docudrama.
Oh, yes.
So it was based on facts and developed into what we did was a trickle story, because we wanted to cover the fact that battering wasn't just happening to poor people or uneducated people or alcoholics. It was happening at every level of society. Mm-hmm. And of course still is.
Right. That was pretty unknown at that time.
Yes.
It was happening in all levels of society.
Yes, it was. Everybody was very surprised, and it broke ground. So we felt really.
I'm sure it did, because that was a silent, almost like a silent epidemic, wasn't it, about the abuse of women? And I think that you brought together. You write about this in your book, that you brought together 20 female actors to work together to pass legislation, right?
Oh,
for shelters.
Actually, the way that happened was I was asked to come to Washington to meet with the congressional committee that was working on the legislation for battered women, and to get shelter money out there into all the different communities who needed it.
Yes.
Okay.
That was
Well, thank you for that work.
Yes, for sure.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, Karen, what else would you like to bring up in terms of what you covered in your book that we haven't touched on?
Well, might like to hear a little about when we were trying to pass the Equal Rights Amendment.
Yes.
There's an attorney now who's suing the government to say that it should be passed, and she has a very strong case. I don't know what will happen, but we really knocked ourselves out. There was a big movement in Hollywood, and we had lots of fundraisers. We went out to lots of communities to talk about why it was important to pass the Equal Rights Amendment. And here we are, 2021. and we still are not included in the Constitution.
It's hard to-
Stunning.
It's stunning, is right. That's right.
Yeah. So I do know that we've made a lot of progress, and I don't mean to minimize that. And there are lots of young women who may not think the ERA is necessary because they feel that they have many equal opportunities. But when I look at what I read about the numbers of women executives, the number of women in Congress, the number of women who are head of Fortune 500 companies, I say, well, yeah, but we still have a long way to go.
That's for sure. Yes.
Yeah.
And of course, the hashtag Me Too movement. You know, in the time when I was on Little House, we didn't even have a word for sexual harassment. Do you remember?
So I'm curious, did you encounter much sexual harassment in your life as an actress?
I did not. I think I was very, very fortunate for two reasons. One was something about the way my mother raised me gave me a way of deflecting the opening pass. And two, by the time I got to New York, I had already graduated from Berkeley, participated in the free speech movement, been to London, done a season of repertory theater. So I was a fully fledged professional when I got to New York. So I wasn't vulnerable the way a lot of these young women are vulnerable, you know, in their early 20s, never having been exposed to all this. So I was very, very fortunate. But there are other kinds of harassment, verbal harassment, put downs, you know, yelling at you on the street, treating you as an object. And I write something about this in the book.
Yeah, you do. You also write about the sexual revolution that you were part of. So, in that age where the sexual revolution broke open and the women's rights movement, and what lessons did you take from that whole era?
I'll tell you, we thought we were so smart. You know, we were going to be like a man. We were going to have sex whenever we wanted. We were going to love them and leave them. At the beginning of that, there was not good birth control. So there were illegal abortions. There was a lot of heartbreak. And then there was Planned Parenthood. So then we thought, now we have the secret and we can really be like a man. And we don't have to be true to one guy. And oh my God.
You're telling my story, Karen.
Really? We really thought we were sharp, you know. And what I found was that as much as I wanted to be like that and tried to be like that and used alcohol and drugs to be like that, the truth was that there was a way in which I tended to bond with a man when I was intimate with him. And I became very vulnerable and attached. Mm-hmm. So having sex with just anybody wasn't going to pay off very well for me.
Yeah. Well said. I think many of us would agree with you.
Well, and now, you know, I lived through when we had illegal abortion, when we got legal abortion. And with what went on last week, or I should say what went on recently, with law trying to make it impossible for a woman to seek medical help when she doesn't want her pregnancy. I just can't believe that we have come to this. I just can't believe it.
So many steps backwards, right? So many steps backwards. And will we, well, we will keep moving forward because we have to, and we have to keep fighting.
Yes, I was thinking right away, well, we'll start a fund so that women can access like travel money to go to another state. But then I heard Lawrence Tribe, the legal scholar, say that the way they've set this law up to turn people into vigilantes, to turn people in, that maybe if I say contributed to Jane Doe's abortion, that someone could arrest me and say I had contributed to breaking this
Yes.
law. Well, that's absurd.
Or pay for it. Yes.
Yes, it is absurd. So, Karen, are you acting? Are you active in the theater now?
Well, there's not much theater now,
That's true.
We're still hoping for more of an opening. These variants make me wonder, how long it's going to take. I did make a small independent movie before the pandemic, so I'm looking forward to hearing exactly when that's going to be released and being able to announce it. And I must say, I love working in the theater, but it's age, my age, lack of parts, the lack of budget that these theaters have, so that the conditions are very, in some cases, they're quite primitive.
Mm-hmm.
And my tolerance for that is going down.
Well, you put up with a lot of that earlier in your career, I know, from what you wrote about in your books.
It's all for love,
Right. So, Karen, what's next for you? Are you doing what you want to be doing? Is this, all the clubs and the groups and the gardening and?
Gosh, I really don't know. I've always been a person who needed a project, creative project. And I'm not happy when I don't have a creative project. But now the book, it's get the book out there. So many years of learning and growing have gone into writing this book, so that now I want people to read it. So that is my main focus, is to talk about it and have people read it and get it out there. And I can't imagine, there might be quite a sinking feeling once the flurry of that is over. I wonder what Karen will do.
When will it be published, Karen? When would you expect it to be published, the book?
November 16th.
Okay, we can run right out and get it. Great. That's good. Yes.
Well,
Yeah, it's pre-orders are now.
Okay. All
People
right.
can find a way to pre-order on Amazon or on my website, KarenGrassle.net. So please do.
Yes.
Well, I recommend it highly, and I know that our listeners will be very, very interested in it. So, anything else, Karen, before we close?
Well, I would like to say something about Little House and the gift that it has been to me. I had no idea that this show would come to rest in people's hearts the way it has. And I have been discovering, as I've been sending the book out for pre-readers, that people love this character and people give back to me because of the work that we did. And I just, live my little life here in my house, and I don't I don't feel that. But when I do have this interaction with people that I don't know, but who want to help me, who want to reach out to me, I'm very moved. And I feel like I'm receiving all kinds of benefits that I didn't know I would. It's just very, very touching, particularly as I was so resistant as a young actress to doing a television series.
Mhm. I can understand. Well, A Little House on the Prairie as a series is near and dear to my heart, and it's one my daughter and I would watch what was reruns by then, but absolutely very memorable part of our lives. So
I'm
I
so
want to thank you
glad.
for that, and thank you for talking with us today. It's just we've looked forward to it so much, and it's just a pure pleasure to be in conversation with you.
Oh, thank you. You've made it so easy and so pleasant for me, both of you.
Thanks so much, Karen. Really a
Thank
pleasure.
you.